Look, many of you are saying, Michelle, are you going to get in touch and talk about the population figures that are out today? Well, yes, I am, because if you're not familiar with them, the population of England and Wales has grown by 610,000 in a year. That's according to the ONS, and I've got to say these are revised figures. And I also will tell you that this increase was the biggest since 1948. Nigel Farage called this the immigration election. He was saying it was a key issue. Many political opponents to him were saying that's not true. Many people are not concerned about immigration. It's more the cost of living, NHS, and so on and so forth. Judging by the inbox and people getting in contact with me today, this is a huge concern for many, many people.
It is, and I think it's actually much more of a concern than people think. So if you take, for example, the NHS, or you think about housing, for example, last year we've just, these statistics show almost 1.1 million people coming to the country, around 500,000 leaving, net increase north of 600,000. We only managed to build 200,000 homes last year. So we can debate all we want about building more homes, and yes, of course, we need to build more homes. But if you build a third as many homes as you need just to satiate the demand of the new people arriving in the country, you are chasing your tail. You are never going to get close to solving the problem. 19,000 people, to our shame as a country, had to wait 3 days or more in accident and emergency last year. People die as a result of that lack of beds, lack of medical attention, despite the heroics of our frontline NHS staff. Of course, this is a multivariant problem, right? It's not as simple as just being immigration. But if we cannot secure the border and freeze migration for the time being, we are not going to come remotely close to solving these problems. And I think people who try to claim that immigration is not a problem and then try to talk about those things in isolation are disingenuous at best.
What do you think, Lee?
Well, I agree. I mean, this is why it's become a flashpoint issue, because, frankly, most people in this country have felt for decades that immigration is running too high. And that's when it was running in, around 200,000. Now it's tripled that net migration. So they've been crying out for politicians to take action on this since the Blair government. And continuously, governments have failed to take action. So there's a real...
Why? Why do you think it is?
Well, the underlying problem is the British growth model. Effectively, for the last sort of 20 plus years, we've relied on adding to the population as the main vector of economic growth. So more people means more consumption, means more goods and services being produced. So we've got very low productivity. It's concentrated growth in the services sector, especially the low-end, low-paid services sector, things like delivery drivers and things like this. And we don't have an investment-led, productivity-led growth model. And we don't have a pipeline of skilled labour being developed out of our own population. So we rely very heavily on importing doctors, nurses, etc., who do phenomenal work in the NHS, but we're stealing those people from poor countries who need those skilled workers themselves. So we don't want to internalise the costs of training those people. And then the third thing is we don't want to pay people enough to do the dirty, difficult and dangerous work that a lot of migrants come here to do, for example, in the care sector, which accounts for a very large proportion of the people coming here on migrant worker visas. So there's just fundamental structural problems in the political economy that are not going to be solved by creating a border command or getting rid of the small boats, right? Illegal migrant crossings are an issue. We're only talking about 45,000 relative to the much larger pool of legal migrants that are coming here. And that's driven by structural problems in the political economy.
So we're stuck with it then? It sounds like.
No, well, you're stuck with it if you have this defeatist, fatalistic attitude, and you're stuck with it if you're incompetent, and you're stuck with it if you're cowards, which would be a, frankly, apt description of the government that we've had for the last 14 years. We are not stuck with it if you believe in the enterprise of the British people, if you actually understand the actual drivers of what moves our economy. The fact is that we are sixth in the world in terms of GDP, but we're 21st in the world in terms of GDP per capita, which I would argue is a better proxy for people's quality of life, right? When you need an accident, an emergency bed, or you need a GP appointment, or you're trying to buy a home, you're far less concerned about what the total GDP number is, right? You care a lot more about how much capacity there is for you and what opportunities that are right for you. So, of course, we have to modernize our economy. We have to modernize our civil service. We have to make sure British people get much more for their taxpayers' money. I'd also point out we have around 9 million. We have around about a fifth of our working-age adults who are economically inactive. No doubt. Some of those could be enticed back to work, and this is consultations that we've done. It's very evident that this is possible, but it's just not worth their while because of the way our extremely complicated tax code works. So, again, one of Reform's policies is eliminating income tax below £20,000, making work for those people. So we agree it is not a simple problem to solve. You know, the point about the small boats, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Having a secure border is incredibly important because it's hugely demoralising to British people to see that we spend £50 billion a year on defence and we can't stop dinghies coming across the channel year after year after year. And, you know, they go into hotels, they get given phones, taxpayers' money into perpetuity, and they jump the line so that actually anything we do from a proper immigration perspective is kind of irrelevant. So I agree it's not going to be easy to solve this country's problems, to pull it back from the abyss. But I'm hugely optimistic as a business person myself who started a company here. I know how much talent and dynamism exists in this country.
And your family, your parents actually came to the UK as immigrants. And do you think, as many people will say, that there is an attitude towards immigrants that's becoming hostile?
I would say that so long as we allow our borders to be open, essentially, have no border security whatsoever, and there is perception that people are able to come here and really, I would argue, take advantage of the goodwill of the British people. If you come here and our border force at the moment acts as a complimentary ferry service from the Channel, brings them in, puts them up. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. These are facts. We see it all the time. Nigel's documented this a lot, and we see it all the time. They get put up in hotels at around £80 a night.
Why did you laugh at that, by the way? Sorry to interrupt.
Just a funny remark.
But it's true. Do you think it's true or not?
Look, the question... So I don't disagree with the importance of border control, right? So a government that cannot control its borders is not a sovereign government. So for me, it is important. The only reason I put it into context is to say, even if you eliminated that overnight, you would still be adding on over 500,000 people through net migration every year. Mm-hmm. So you've got to look at the larger structural drivers, and not focus, as lots of people would like to do, on the illegal crossings. Because illegal crossings, maybe you could do something about it, although it's not easy to do something about it. Because what would people have the Royal Navy do? I mean, sink these dinghies in the Channel? Is that really the country that we want to become? No. Drag them back to France and the French won't take them? I mean, these are thorny issues. But even if you were able to totally eliminate them, the much larger issue of massive legal migration, which is caused by structural problems in the economy, would remain.
But you see, I think...
It's just the case, I think, of tweaking the tax code here. The question is, who is going to pay for the training of domestic workers to do the jobs that we currently just import people from overseas to do? Somebody's got to pay for it. At the moment, we basically get the Indian government to pay to train our doctors, which means that we don't have to invest in the domestic training of workers in this country.
How about we eliminate the £600 million of taxpayers' money being spent on diversity officers in the civil service? That would be a start.
Well, it may be...
I mean, just as one example.
OK, that's a completely different issue as far as I'm concerned. But
my point is just that there's a lot of waste inside the civil service and inside public service.
There's some waste, but we just don't spend enough in this country on training, on research and development. You must know this yourself as a businessman. This country has got a serious problem with underinvestment in skills training and research and technology, which is why we've got extremely low productivity growth. We don't pay care workers enough to attract those 7 million people out of their houses and into work which is difficult, dirty, unpleasant, unrewarded, and unrecognised. If you want to be able to fill those vacancies from domestic supplies of labour, you've got to be willing to pay for it. And that's the thing. In this country, we're often not willing to pay for the services that we want to have.
Are you one of those people who've just been discussing economically inactive people and how do you entice those people back into the world of work? Are you one of those people that are in that category? And what, if anything, would entice you to go back to the world of work? And tell me the truth. I'm going to ask you an honest question. Are you willing to do what we've just been calling like the dirty, the hard jobs? Would you honestly be willing to do those jobs? I don't know. Would you go out into the fields and pick the fruit or whatever it is, so on and so forth? Tell me the truth. Get in touch. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. After the break, we'll carry on this conversation, but I also want to ask you as well, Reform UK, do they need to be more democratic? It's a limited company. Does that bother you or not? I'll see you in 2.